Hey everybody, this is On coming to you with this month's Connecting Codes video, and we're going to be taking a look at the insights on world events, what we can expect happening in our world for November of 2025. Now, if you don't know my work, this is what I do. Every year I put out a new edition called The Code Journey, and this is our current edition. We have the 2026 is out. You can find it on my website at compassioncodes.com and just go to the books tab, the code journey, and you'll see on there the direct links to get you to the purchase pages on there, and that will give you a help out. And hopefully you'll take a look and enjoy it. The ebook is free right now, so you can kind of play with it and explore it and see how you like it through the end of the year. And then you can always make a purchase of the 2026 book from there. And that'll be, I like having a paperback copy personally, but we're kind of near the end of the year now, and that gives you a way to explore the content in it. But every month I like to put out these videos, and it just kind of gives us a heads up. What can we expect in world events? What can we be happening? I know so many people follow them these days, and so I've kind of gotten to where I've incorporated it in a separate channel like this for people who have an interest in world events and want to kind of keep their pulse on things and see what's happening. So we look at it from this energetic perspective of what the energetic patterns are, and that gives me an idea of what types of things we might be seeing come up. So it's not really a predictive tool. I happen to have a gift for reading the energies, the vibrations, the patterns that are present in the world, and then taking a look at it and seeing how that is going to impact things that we might see or what we might be able to expect. And from there, we can work with the foresight and maybe not be caught off as guard. We can be prepared for certain things and work with it from there. So I think it's a good thing to have that foresight, that information to work with on there. So as we go into November, just for the overall in the month energy, what we see is hope is comes up as we see the results of our previous efforts. So the efforts that have been made, let's say seeds or things that were started maybe earlier this year, back in May, for example. Usually we go back about a 6-month period when we look at this. We're going to start seeing some of the things that were implemented then, some of those results start coming forward. So the successes that start coming forward are not necessarily a sudden thing. They're things that have been getting nurtured and taken care of and worked on over the last several months and throughout the year here. So that's going to come up, and that's going to give some people some hope and inspiration, I think, to just kind of be like, okay, so something is actually happening here. There are things going on. And I think that's important right now, even in world events, that we have some of that, because if people don't ever see anything that's happening, it's a little hard. I mean, obviously, we all want things to happen instantaneously almost, but we know they can't because they take time and they have to go in a certain format or process or things like that. And they need to come out at the right timing. And if they're not done in the right timing, something as big as what we're going through in our world these days, if it's not done in the right timing, then we hurt ourselves. We hurt ourselves. It's damaging. You only get pretty much one chance to get something this big, this right. And if you don't get it right along the way, so-called right, I'm not a big right, wrong person, but linguistics, what can I say? It's if it doesn't happen as it needs to happen, if you don't make it work in the right way, then you lose everything. So it's like a big risk. And that's kind of the times we're in right now, is this big risk. So we should this month in November see many successes and blessings coming forward. And I think that's a positive thing. I think that's going to help a lot of people out, especially as we're going into the holiday season. We're going to see some things getting regenerated. So maybe things that we haven't seen in a long time, and this could go back even decades if we think about it, things that have not happened in many, many years getting regenerated. We talk about different things like that around the financial system. There are aspects of the financial system that could be getting regenerated, which could indicate, we could indicate in November, we might hear something about returning to a gold-backed currency during that time. That would be an example of something being regenerated. Whether that's actually the thing that's going to happen or not, I can't say that 100%, but that would be the type of thing that we would see coming around, because that would certainly nourish successes and blessings. And that makes it much more tangible when we have real assets like that. We also need to be very grateful for what's coming through and not be greedy. So I think this is also a big thing. A lot of people, they tend to get very greedy, especially if they've been in deprivation. They tend to hoard everything. They tend to grab onto everything. They tend to grab as much as they possibly can with things. But we need to take that point to be grateful for the things that are working, and especially if they're not as big or as much of a wow factor as we would like them to be. We still need to be grateful, because when we're grateful for the small things, that leads to the bigger things in there. So being grateful for what comes through. More efforts to help humanity is going to be going on during the month of November. That'll be humanity, animals, and the earth. By the way, they all go hand in hand when we look at this kind of abundance and humanitarian energetic pattern that's present. And that can go two different directions. I think a lot of people are naturally going to want to move in that direction. They want to support or back things that are favorable for people, for the earth, for animals. But we're also going to see a spotlight put on humanitarian organizations. And that can go two ways, because there are some humanitarian organizations out there that are really, really good. And there are some humanitarian organizations out there that are really, really corrupt. And they're just big money laundering channels is what they are. So that spotlight is going to get put on these humanitarian organizations. And it's been happening off and on, and we've been seeing it. And that includes even organizations like the UN, like WHO, like Gavi, like all these different organizations out there that pretend to be humanitarian, but they're not necessarily doing that. But we could see maybe more highlights on local humanitarian organizations as well, who are doing good things, who are making these breakthroughs. And I'm a person that's very pro supporting that. Like, if you're going to go out and volunteer, you're going to go out and give your time to one of these organizations, I suggest to look locally. Look at the individually owned things. Matter of fact, over the last week, I had somebody just bring into the realization how these big corporations are coming in and taking over veterinary practices. And I work at an animal shelter, so it really piqued my attention. And this came to me by somebody that was in one of my courses. And I thought, wow, I didn't even think about the corporations taking over private veterinary practices. And I don't know why. I mean, it makes sense, but I did not even think about that. And it's something to ask, because like where this person is, it used to be private up until like around the time of COVID. And then it got taken over by this organization. So that's kind of scary to think about, because we know what happens when those big corporations come in and how they're, embedded with other pharmaceutical companies and different things. And it's not going to be about the welfare of the animals. So we do have to double check it even when it's local. But if you can find one that's locally owned, like the one I volunteer my time at is individually owned. It's not it's privately owned nonprofit, and it's not a corporation, like attached to a big corporation. And that is a much better place for us to give our energy, and a much better place to focus and to support, because most of the time most of the money actually does go to the animals, for example, in that situation, as opposed to just going to really big, high salaries. Look for these places that are almost all volunteers, and don't have a lot of paid positions to them. That's where you're going to find people a lot of times that are a little more focused on the actual cause. Because if they're not getting paid for it, that's a little bit different than when they're getting these like six-figure salaries, $500,000 salaries or $1 million salaries to run it. So very different things in there. Looking for those components are important. So going to be in the spotlight for better or worse, I think, in there. We also are going to start seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, that proverbial light at the end of the tunnel coming through, and we can see where challenges and difficulties are going to be ending. Even if they're not ending in the month of November, I think we can at least see that they're moving in that direction, that they're going to end. And it doesn't mean that we won't have some rough days ahead of us, because when I'm sitting down looking at like the 2027 codes, for example, and we still have rough times ahead of us. It's just part of the times we live in. We're going to wave in and out of them. But I think people are actually going to get that hope, because they're going to feel like, okay, this isn't going to last forever. We actually are going to see things happen. We actually are going to have some forward momentum and forward movement in things. This is a time where we could see people harmonizing more. And I think part of what is bringing people more into this harmony, this space, this peace, this hope kind of space, is because they're realizing the critical point that we're at. And even those people in corruption and who work with a lot of corruption are recognizing that we're at a pretty critical point, I think, pretty dangerous point in many ways. So hanging on to that, it's going to be really nice to start to see people working together a little bit more, even if they have differences of ideas and opinions or how to do things. That's going to be positive. We're also going to see during this time a lot of lasting impressions going on. So the things that people say and do, it's going to be interesting, because they're not going to be able to live those down very easily. It's people are going to grab onto it and clutch it. So we'll probably have, like meme city. We're going to have a lot of good meme material coming up in November, I think, in there. And that's always an interesting thing, but it's always something to recognize that when somebody is walking a clearer path, when they're really coming from a space of caring about people and the earth and animals and all of these different things, and they really have a humanitarian focus to them, that they're always going to end up leaving a favorable impression, no matter what the situation is, because the heart's in the right place and they're coming from that space of caring. So it's a very big difference than somebody who's trying to cover up for something that they are doing that they know is not really legitimate or is corrupt in there. So those lasting impressions are going to stay with somebody. So it's going to be interesting to see what people do, because it's going to be very hard for them to live down or get out of it. Like I said, it's going to create some great memes, I imagine, out there. We're going to be doing a lot of learning collectively from the personal experiences we're having. So again, whether those are hard experiences or favorable experiences, we're going to be learning a lot from them. And for example, also, we're going to be hearing probably a lot from people who have actually experienced things. And that means we'll probably see some more interviews and things coming out, for example, of people who have been in the battle zones personally, who have stood, there in the trenches, so to say, who have been hostages coming out. So like where we've had all this hostage release happening recently, we'll probably see more interviews coming out. It's going to take time for them, obviously, because they have to recalibrate, they have to reintegrate into society after being in that hostage situation. And that will be interesting to listen to. So again, hearing these personal experiences, and I think that's going to be more and more. And again, we could see this for good or bad, right? Because we could have people rolled out on both sides of the fence saying, look, there's nothing happening. And the other person saying, oh yeah, there's a whole lot happening in there. So, that personal experience and that's going to be used because that helps people to connect, that feels more believable than just a reporter. So we're still going to have to keep our eyes and our ears open and beware that there could still be deception and things going on with that. But that being said, we we will see that. And I think that that's, again, we'll still have to filter through some things. So we'll have to rely on those internet warriors to get out there and do their research on people and to share with us what their real connections are when we're hearing their stories. But I think it's going to add some new layers and new dimensions. And I think it will actually bring out a lot of truth for people to hear, and it will actually give them some different perspectives on what's actually happening around. Um, Also, the experiences that we are getting at this time during November is going to be designed to teach us, and we're going to be having these own personal experiences and collective experiences, where it's going to be hard to deny the truth. And that's going to motivate people to take action. So we may have people that have been in denial of the truth, and they haven't wanted to see it because they're holding hate because they don't like a particular political party or whatever the case is in that situation. And they're going to start getting personal experiences that go, man, I've been against this person or that person or this narrative or that, thought that was just hyped up, psychobabble, whatever. um, Conspiracy theories, whatever it is, I thought that wasn't true. And now they're going to start getting experiences that they're going to find out that that's true. And they're going to be experiences that are going to be challenging enough or hard enough or big enough in their life that they're not going to be able to deny it. And I think up until now, some things, have not happened as quickly as we might have thought they would happen, or we haven't seen the damage. And there's that could be for many reasons. There's a variety of different layers and pieces in that. But now it's going to get to that point where, okay, all the things that we've kind of known that haven't been on the surface, that there's been controversy about, are going to come up and people are going to get their own experiences around it. And they're going to realize, okay, this is an issue, so um, it- this is going to help, I think, in a lot of ways. As hard as it is going to be to watch people go through some of these things and to have these personal experiences, sometimes it takes the hard experiences for people to be able to accept, acknowledge, or realize the truth is the truth. And I pray that it's not too bad and not too hard on people. But I am also very grateful that it will get to a point where it can't be denied as well. Let's see here. New ideas and plans are going to be announced and implemented. I'm really curious to find out what that's going to be about. These new ideas and plans. And so I think this is kind of a thing that on one hand, they're new, on one hand, they may not be new. Um, They may sound new to us. They may be different than what we thought was going to get implemented. I think that's another piece of it. Um, is they're just going to be a little bit different than what we thought was going to be done. So this kind of shifting gears, changing gears, information that comes out, experiences that we have, directions that things go, that could create a shift or a change of plans to come up and happen. And things that happen could create new ideas and new plans and new ways forward. Um, so here again, we may have some truth come out, and if we're going down one path and that path proves to be something that is not feasible or positive to go down, we may have to implement new plans. Or if we have something that is collapsing and ending, which we have a lot of that energy in the month of November, then we've got to have something to roll out in its place. So I know there's been a lot of talk around the healthcare system. So, if you're going to end Obamacare, so to say, you've got to roll out something else. You can't just end one thing and not have something else in place to take care of it, to deal with those needs of things. So I think that's going to be another Another piece. So I'm kind of excited to see what that is going to be about in here. Now, from the 1st through the 21st, we're going to have unexpected upheaval coming. That energy, it's unpredictable. There's no way. All we can do is stay open, stay flexible. Don't get too set on your plans or things happening a certain way because they're probably going to shift gears. They're probably not going to happen the way we think they're going to happen in there. But these unexpected upheavals can bring blessings. They can actually lead to good things. It's not always just a bunch of upheaval that is full of chaos and leaves us in a really devastated space. These can also herald in blessings. So sometimes we need that chaos to be able to bring the blessing pieces in or for blessings to unfold, or what seems like disaster at first could be great blessings in disguise. So we want to stay open to that, not get too locked into the drama, trauma pieces of things. Lots of misunderstandings and miscommunications. Again, that's probably going to be some great meme material as a result of that. People will be busy. Our meme creators will be very busy in the month of November, I have a feeling. But with that misunderstandings, miscommunications, that's also a reminder that, as brilliant as people can be sometimes they're just going to misspeak. Sometimes the wrong word is just going to come out. And we need to be a little bit forgiving, honestly. We need to be a little bit forgiving of people because we all make a mistake once in a while. We put a lot of pressure on these people that are in the spotlight and our politicians to be so perfect. Um, Here again, we have to get down to the truth of things and realize that sometimes something just didn't come out right. Or maybe we misunderstood something. Maybe we thought something was going to be a certain way and we didn't do our research um, and see it. So, again, we're seeing some of those things where sometimes things are presented a certain way, but we're not taking the time to do all the research because we're just going, oh, I really like the way that sounds. And then we're not delving into what it actually is, right? We've seen some of this with some of like the no tax on overtime type stuff. Now, I think eventually taxes are going to go away. Personal opinion, okay? Uh, there's just a few things behind that between returning to the Constitution and various things like that in the U.S. that I think is going to head in that direction. Um, but whether this is a starting point or not, but it's, when you look at no tax on overtime pay, it's not like when you get into the details of it, it's not the whole overtime pay that is tax-free. It's only the overtime part of the overtime pay. It's only the half as opposed to the time and a half that is tax-free. So, if you make $40 an hour, this was an example that was used by somebody. If you make $40 an hour and your overtime pay then becomes $60 an hour, you're still taxed on 40 of that $60. It's only the $20 that you're not taxed on. So you got to watch some of these loopholes. Again, this is that reminder that says you can't take things 100% at face value. You've got to do your research and not just go, oh, so and so saying that this is the way it's going to be. And, both sides do this because they want to look good in the eyes of the public. They want the public just to hear that one piece that sounds amazing and incredible. And, when you're ready, when you're able to scrutinize the people that you support for these same things, now you're getting somewhere. Now you're getting somewhere because we have to be able to look at it and say, you know, it's not 100% true in there. Um, so we got to look at it. We may want certain things, but again, do I think it may lead to somewhere? Maybe this is a stepping stone. Yeah, it probably is, in my opinion. But we gotta look at it along those lines. So misunderstandings, miscommunications, and we've got to stay on top of that. And not let that get to us and just kind of get things corrected, get things straight, and then move forward. Unexpected storms or storms that are going to be bigger than expected, I can see coming in November. Now, does that always mean they're going to be devastating? No, it doesn't. But it does mean that we need to be careful. It does mean that Probably, if we're wise, we'll have some extra supplies on hands. We'll have dry food goods on hand that we can use, right? Because if your power goes down, you don't have a backup generator or things like that, then, um, you know, you're kind of SOL in a way. I see these people, they stock their refrigerators up, right? Like we're going to stock the refrigerator up in case the power goes out. And then it's like, yeah, but then you've got all this food going to waste if it has to be refrigerated. So you want to think about non-refrigerated food to eat. Um, I think more about that because of vehicle life, but not everybody thinks that way. I learn and I forget, and so yeah, make sure you have a little extra stuff on hand. And I believe in preventative being the best care. Preventative is the best way to keep storms away. If I'm well prepared, I'm ready to deal with them. I've got, everything set and ready to handle it. Oftentimes it's not too bad. And if it is, great, I'm ready to handle it. So we could see that definitely. And some of those storms definitely could be detrimental and they could be devastating. I know here at the time that I'm filming this, where they're talking this major snow norte is snow NATO. I can't I can't remember what they call it exactly. It's a combination of a snowstorm and a tornado, and it happens in the Midwest a lot of times. But there, it drops. The storm is getting ready to drop huge amounts in the West Coast, Northwest, and across the Midwest, and major storms, rainstorms down south. We're not going to get hit too bad up here in the Northeast, at least where I live in Maine. We have some rain coming in, but we're only looking at like an inch, inch and a half, maybe. We're not looking at that major storm, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be prepared for a little bit more or for some strong winds to come through or something else that we're not expecting. So, we just want to be prepared. Also, we're going to see a lot of things being done intuitively from the 1st through the 21st versus logically, and that's going to throw some twists and turns into things. If we look at Trump, he's like that. He is, in many ways, he's very practical and very reasonable and very logical in his processes, but at the same time, he is very unpredictable and very much intuitive. And if he gets like this intuitive nudge, he'll just go off on a whole different direction. And everybody better just keep up with him, or, that's it, you're gone. You're just kind of going to be totally lost in things. Um, so we could see that, and that could also be behind some of the sudden shifts and changes that come up along the way. We want to stay calm, whatever the turmoil is, the chaos that's going on, the shifts, the changes, the unknown, the uncertainties. We just want to stay calm in it. And when we do that, we can actually deal with things. If we get into the drama, if we get into all of the chaos and all of the craziness that's going on, then it's going to be hard to get through it. And we're just going to, get pulled in and tossed around and tumbled around a bit in there. We can see where there's heavy materialism and greed during this period of time. Again, this is the first 3 weeks of the month versus doing what's right. So who's going to fill their commitments? Who is going to honor their oaths, their vows that they've taken? Who is not going to do that? Who is just going to go for the money? Who's going to say, I don't care. I don't care if it destroys a state or a population or a group of people or animals or whatever else. I don't care. If I can make some money off of it, I'm going to do it. So we really got to be careful of those people operating in greed, because they're the one that will sell us out. They're the ones that are going to really choose some things that will be harmful for people. But we really want to stand behind those people who are making the right choices, who have those opportunities to get a big payoff, but don't take it. And that's going to be very, very important as well in there. So who's going to fulfill their commitments? Another big piece of this. Who will fulfill the commitments? Now, that last week and a half of the month, November 22nd through the end of the month, lots of delays and blocks to corruptions, to lies, but we could also see some of those delays and blocks in things that are supposed to be implemented or to come through or to roll out. Everything has to be brought into divine alignment. If it's going to go through, it has to be done in integrity. It has to be done through virtues and spiritual values and things like that. If it's rooted in lies and deception, manipulation, or anywhere that the lies, deception, manipulation is, or lack of ethics is, we're going to see blocks and delays in there. So most of the time, this is going to be where corruption is. So we want to look at that and say, okay, where are the blocks and the delays? Okay, somewhere in there, there's corruption. Otherwise, they wouldn't be happening in there. We need to help prioritize, help and prioritize those who cannot help themselves. Who's our most vulnerable? And I think we're going to see a priority given to it, and that could be an aspect of why certain things get put on hold. So those who are like the excess things, those who are not truly in need, their things may get put on hold so that people like our veterans, our seniors, our disabled population, are getting the help that they need. The people, for example, on fixed income will be made a priority over somebody who has, a six-figure salary coming in, things like that. So I think that's going to be a good thing to see happening, and that's the way it should be. We should be taking care of our most vulnerable people, the people who cannot take care of themselves. It doesn't mean that they're totally incapacitated, but it just means that, here again, they might be on a fixed income or something that is, they just don't have that ability to take care of themselves. Say, like somebody who's 80 years old may not have the same capability to take care of themselves the way a 20 or 30-year-old does, for various reasons. Okay, lots of truth getting exposed at the end of the month here. So watch for that. I think it's going to get exciting, even with it being holidays for a lot of people. I think it's going to get exciting in that area. We're going to see a lot of true connections as false connections are exposed. So we need to be careful of that Trojan horse energy. That's really what this is like. Those people who come in, they appear to be your friend. They appear to gift you with something, and inside it's not a gift at all. It's a bomb. I don't know, it's whatever it is. We got to be careful. This Trojan horse energy is always representative of people and things not being what they're packaged to be. So we want to be really careful of that when we're looking at bills being passed, for example, laws being passed, or different things being put through. We want to be careful because there could be something hidden. There could be something hidden inside of them that we need to be paying attention to. We want to be really careful of those people who claim to switch parties suddenly, who maybe have been really harsh working against, certain things, and then all of a sudden they're on board with something. They're probably Trojan horses. They're probably seeking out information to find out vulnerabilities, to find out how to sabotage. So we have to be very careful about that. True connections are going to bring successes, and false ones are going to sabotage. So I've kind of warned. I have some people I look at very cautiously, especially even in our current administration. They're very well praised people in the administration. And I still look at them cautiously. Even if I support a lot of things that are being done by the administration, there are still people in it that I look at with a lot of scrutiny because I think, I don't know that that person is who they believe, have positioned themselves to be. So I have to sit back and watch and see what happens and see if I'm right or see if, something else is going on in there. I do think that we're going to have a lot of transformation, a lot of clearing of trauma going on. And that's trauma that's been created in the past. And when I think of that going on, I think of more peace deals coming up. I think of more peace being established between people who whose cultures, whose belief systems, whose um, lifestyles in the past, maybe in, their ancestors or whatever, were highly traumatized. And that was the start of why they started battling, of why they started the wars. So I'm thinking more peace deals. If we're going to clear this karma out, we have to create the peace. We have to create the harmony in there. A lot of correcting course and breaking through things. So if Trump wants to put through another dozen peace deals, he could probably do it during this time. The energy definitely favors it. It definitely favors making those things happen in there. Some of these endless wars really could come to an end during the month of November. That possibility is very strong in there, and I think that's very reasonable to think about, to consider, because it really does have a lot to do with clearing past trauma when these peace deals are made and when this transformation is made. And I think for the most part, most people don't want to fight, especially with the technology and the weapons that we have now. I don't think most people want to be in a war. I don't think they want to be in a battleground. I don't think they want to be losing lives. Not the average person. I mean, you're always going to have the sick, sadistic people out there who do that, but the average person really doesn't. That's not where their head is at. Um, so the past, though, can haunt us. And why is it coming up to haunt us during this time? It's coming up so that we will transform it and we will clear that trauma. Something can only haunt us if there's some sort of trauma associated with it, right? Aspects of our past, things that we did, bad choices that we made in the past, they can only haunt us if there's a trauma connection. If we clear the trauma connection, they can't haunt us anymore. That's the really cool thing. We can't undo what we did, but we can clear some of the consequences by changing course and making different decisions and going in a different direction. So as this comes up, I think we are going to be offered, or people around the world will be offered, a second chance. Caution's still going to be needed. People are still going to have to be careful because, we still have some danger components here. But second chances are a real possibility. And those second chances, if they are used wisely, can lead to stable and favorable futures. And I think ultimately that's what we got to look at. We got to look at, what are we leaving future generations to work with? What are we giving them? And are we taking care of people? You know, not just battling with each other. That's not going to work. Large crowds. I think that there can be accidents, danger, death in busy, large, crowded places. So that means people are going to have to be careful when they're out doing their holiday gift shopping. A lot of people do that right during this time at the end of November. They go out Black Friday, they go out, the day after Thanksgiving. That's when they start all of it. Everything's very busy, very crowded. I think we're going to have to be careful. Um, Travel's not going to be good during this time. If you don't have to do it, I don't recommend it. On the other hand, I do fully understand it because I do understand the desire to be near family and to have that time and to focus on things of value. Um, because in these days, nothing's a guarantee. And we need to be able to see people when we can see them. So I don't know. I think when I think about travel, I always think about, what kind of travel do I have the most amount of command over? I have command over going into places where there's not going to be weather issues. I have command over um, driving more than I do flying, right? Because I don't have command over the plane when I fly, but I do have command over my car. Of course, unless you've got one of those crazy self-driving cars. I don't ever want to own one of those, honestly. But just saying. Um, Yeah, look at where you have the most amount of command over things. But you still have to use caution. You still have to be extra on alert. I don't recommend it if it's not needed, especially with some of the other energy that's present. I just think it's really, really risky this year around this particular time. We will see a lot of advancements and progression for those supporting divine presence, but we also are going to have a lot of spiritual predators active. So, got to be very, very careful that way. Okay, in the actions, in other words, what steps are we going to take? Where are we going to really see movement happening? In the action energy for November, we've got people who are going to be tempted by material gain. So, again, that. And there may be some manipulation of things going on to flesh out these people who are focused on material gain. That's a possibility. We're going to see those people who will sell out their constituents, the people of their country or the country itself for a little profit. We'll see those people who can be bought out. We're going to see, those people who are in something only for the money. And that's going to be a big eye opener. I think, again, that's going to be some of the personal experiences that people get. Those who lack strength and ethics, uh, they're much more likely to sell out or be bought out. So know the people who hold ethics and know the people who don't hold ethics around you. And that'll give you an idea of what your particular area might be in for. We need to focus on values during this time, family, friends, adjustments. And I think that we could maybe even hear more adjustments coming along the way that give people opportunities to focus on family. Or we could see more things being passed to support having a family and being in a family. I think more and more, again, as the times go on and the experiences come up for people, they're looking at things going, you know what? I don't want to work 7 days a week. I don't want to miss out on family time, on gatherings, on getting together, on seeing these people. I don't want to go 5 years and then all of a sudden get a message they passed on. It's going to become a bigger focus. And I think we're going to see some things, actions taken that support family, that support things of value. Um, this is sort of an adjustment of priorities is what we're seeing, and people getting away from status and money, extravagant lifestyles, kind of that focus on there, saying, no, I'd rather have a really fantastic family vacation without, you know, technology and be a family and have some conversations. Family's more important than climbing the corporate ladder. I think we're going to see some of those kinds of decisions coming down. Lots of lies, deception, manipulation being used to control people, lies being used to cover up lies, and that's going to end up exposing people. So that control, again, where the corruption feels like it loses control, it almost just digs in harder. It looks at it and it says, I've got nothing to lose, so I'm gonna I'm gonna give it all I can have, in there. So again, we have to use these connections, but if we're standing in ethics and morals, we really don't have a lot to worry about because that's going to protect us. Our ethics and our morals are going to protect us from those things because we won't go along with them. We can't be bought. We can't be sold out. So that'll be a good thing. Thoughts, where people's mindsets are going to be from the 1st through the 9th. Big shifts in transformation, but we're also going to have, that also includes death energy, endings, accidents. We're probably going to see an increase in suicides. And yes, it's the holidays, and yes, suicides naturally increase around the holidays, but this is going to be more due to an inability to have self-forgiveness. So let's say people made a bad decision and they bought into something, they followed a narrative or something like that, and that narrative led them down a path that um, they now maybe regret. They wish they hadn't done it. We're seeing that with some of the kids who have had sex changes. We're seeing that with um, people that maybe they got a shot and now they're regretting it because they're dealing with things um, that came as a result of that. Um, and they just won't be able to live with themselves. It's literally a case of not being able to live with themselves in these suicides. So this can be very hard to watch. But I think there is that mindset. And so if you know of somebody that's in that mindset of, I have nothing left to live for, pay attention to them, give them some time, help them out, hopefully give them some hope, whatever. Um, See them through this period of time. This is really only like a week and a half of the month. And if you can kind of get them past this hump, that will be a big thing. But don't be in that space of, I'm too busy. This is not the time for that. We need to consider the future and not just the present. So, a lot of things may work in the present, but they could be very destructive moving forward. So we need to consider, how does this play out? What does this look like from a long-term perspective as opposed to a short-term perspective? We need to stop just using the Band-Aid, and we need to treat the disease is what we need to do. So no more of these quick fix things. It's time for real solutions to come forward in here. We're going to be learning a lot about what does and does not work, and what can and cannot move forward with us. So again, this is that area that I was talking about where things are going to come up and we're going to have some unexpected shifts coming in, or uh, things like that, changes in plans, adjustments being made to things. I think that very much could work here because it's this trial and error. Sometimes you have to put something out there, see if it's going to work or not work. If it's not going to work, you have to take it back to the proverbial drawing board and then rework it, and then put it back out again. Um, so I think we're in that trial and error, and so we're going to have to just be a little bit patient with that. And that's what we're doing. And some things cannot move forward with us. Some things are not going to work. We don't want them to continue, and we need to be able to close them out. And so when we have things that are going to end, we're going to be looking for, the mindset is going to be, look, these things aren't working out. They're not valuable. They don't serve us in any way. Let's just consciously, with awareness, close them out and let them go and move forward. And we can see that. I can see there's different things like that where, we see some of these new leaders that are coming in and these new administrations, not just in the US, but around the world. And they're getting rid of whole departments because these departments really aren't needed. They're using up a lot of money and they're not needed. So I think there will maybe be aspects of things like that coming through. And so more that sort of cutting the fat, as we say. Um, but if we end them with love, if we end them in appreciation, okay, this maybe served us for a little bit, or this did this, or we tried it, it didn't work, and let's just close it out. Then it's going to be okay. We're in this process of refining. So we're learning. We're just learning what works and what doesn't work. And every time something doesn't work, we refine it, we go back in and we try again. And that's what we're in. From the 10th through the 19th, so that middle part of the month, we're going to need more creativity, more wisdom coming up. We're going to see people going to looking outside of the box more on things, and people trying to stay more on neutral ground. This is an aspect of sharing observations, but letting others resolve their own issues. Again, this kind of ties in with what I was talking about with the peace deals. It's kind of like, you could see Trump being the negotiator in there going, okay, well, if they take this path, that's really not going to be good for you. And, if they take this path, that's really not going to be good. And my observation is this. Now you guys work it out. Here's my opinion. You guys work it out. But we really don't want to be involved in other people's battles and issues. That's really important, because we will take the heat for that. We will be the ones that end up with issues when we do that. And it may bring peace to those people who are fighting, but at the cost of us. So we don't quite want to go to that extent. Sometimes we have to step back and step out of things and let people learn their own lessons and have their own conversations. And then that opens those doors and possibilities. Also, what I see is there will be stronger regulations where you have corrupt leaders in positions of power and they're losing power. So we could look at that at, like, for example, some of the people over in the UK, even in Australia, things like that. But I think primarily around the UK is one of those areas that the more they feel like they're losing power, the more those corrupt leaders feel like they're losing power, the more regulations they're going to put on there. I mean, we've seen some really absurd things coming out of the UK, honestly, with, you know, eh, social media posts, people being arrested over stuff that is not even, it's not a call for violence or anything. It's, you can't pray a lot of places. I mean, it's gotten really crazy over there. So they're going to get even tougher and stricter. They're going to try to put more regulations. They're going to be seeking more control on people. Um, People have to stand up to that. Wherever you are, you have to stand up to that because it's only going to get worse and it's only going to get stricter. And there's only going to be more rights taken away when you go down that path. If you don't stop it, then they're going to keep going. And they're already on that path of, we don't care what you want. We're going to do what we want to do. Um, People have to stand up to it. It's like standing up to the proverbial bully. If you don't stand up to them, they'll never stop being a bully. They'll just become more of a bully because they're getting away with things. And then we're going to see a lot of movement again towards self-sufficiency. I think we're already there. We're going to find out what countries are self-sufficient, which countries can do without resources from other countries. It's part of why Trump has brought so many things back to the United States, and why he's making some of the moves he does, because he does not want the United States to be reliant on any other country for anything, if at all possible. And so that's where some of that movement, especially with the technology companies coming back, what is that about? He doesn't want us dependent on China for the precious metals and minerals and things like that that go into the electronics and the technology, which is needed in defense. Like it or not, it's needed in defense. And so, yeah, the countries who are able to be self-sufficient are going to come out okay. It could be really harsh for some of the other countries who are not. From the 20th through the end of the month, the mindset is going to be about peace from practical and responsible action. So this is a really good thing. Again, we're coming back to that peace deal area. I think we can find more resolution, and I think having resolution at the end of November is going to be really valuable and hopeful for a lot of people. Words and actions, again, make this strong, lasting impact on people, and they're going to be remembered. So whatever these leaders choose, that's going to be like their legacy. That's going to be a legacy piece that's going to get attached to them. So if Trump brings peace in, that's going to get attached to his legacy. If other leaders try to start wars, that's going to be attached to their legacy in there. We need to focus on peace, and we need to support leaders who are focused on peace. We've got to stop this division. It doesn't matter whether you're religious, whether you're spiritual, the paths all come back to learning how to integrate and to be in peace and not at battle and division with each other, because that is the way forward. We need to, and that's not ignoring that there's going to be bad players. There's always going to be a certain amount of bad players living in a heavy dimension space. But, if we focus on the peace, if that's where we put our energy, if that's where we keep our thoughts, then we have a possibility. If we don't, we're just wiping all of the possibilities away because we can't get to the places we need to go to unless we implement it. And it's got to be practical and it's got to be responsible in the methods. We need to see the facts and not only our perceptions. And again, this is kind of what I was touching on earlier. When you look at something, if it was the opposite party in place, how would you be viewing it? It's a good checkpoint. It's a good checkpoint to say, well, okay, if I'm standing with the right party, how would I feel if the left party was doing what my right party is doing? If I'm standing with the left party, how would I feel about the right party doing what my party is doing? If you're not 100% on board, then there's something wrong there. Then it's a perception and not a fact. We have to look at the facts. We can't just take these things for face value. Corruption is going to come in and they're going to try to trigger, they're going to play these mind games. They're going to try to trigger ethical people to react. So I imagine Trump's going to get a lot of challenges. I imagine other people are going to get a lot of challenges. I imagine a lot of people on a personal level are going to get a lot of challenges in here. Because what corruption will do during this time is to invert things and call for violence on ethical people. Again, we have to be careful. We have already got that death, ending, accident, danger energy present. We've got to be careful, especially in crowds, crowded areas, large cities. We've got to watch out and pay attention. And we must not play into their chaos. So they're going to try to convince people that they have all this massive support behind them. So there'll be a lot of mental games and they'll film it and they'll go, look at this massive amount of people. Okay, like they just did this with No King's Day. Okay, look at this massive amount of people. Well, the people were only there for specific hours. Look, there are people that obviously were there because that's what they believe. Okay, that's what they're backing. But a lot of those people weren't. A lot of those people were there collecting a paycheck. They were there getting paid to be there. So they make it look a lot bigger. Plus, we have all the AI optics that take a crowd and they say, and they don't back it, obviously with any facts. Oh, it looks like it's about 7 million people. But they also have a lot of AI tactics where they can take, where let's say you have 100 people on a street. So it's a very small crowd. And the AI goes and it fills in the crowd. So it looks like you have 1 million people there instead of 100 people there. We've got to be very careful. Unfortunately, even the things that we see, if we see it on a screen, we can't trust it. If we haven't seen it with our own eyes, it's getting harder and harder to trust anything that is seen through a screen. Because a lot of it out there is doctored up. And that's just the reality. And those are the mental games that will be played on ethical people to get them riled up, to get them divided, to get them arguing, to get them aggravated. Moving on to the soul's energy. Why the soul? Because that comes down to a big part of how we act and how we think. What is going on in the soul energy influences the other pieces. It's all interrelated. In the first week, the 1st through the 6th of the month, and in the soul energy, there's a magnification of transformation and endings. Things just cannot continue as they've been. And we've got to consider what is in alignment with God and divine source. So again, I think this is where we're going to start hearing those news. Okay, this is going to come to an end. This is going to be closed down. This is going to be shut off. It's very interesting. This energy pattern is present in the first week because repeatedly we've heard Trump say over and over again, just wait until November 1st. Just wait until November 1st. So he's got a lot of things that seem to be getting ready to be activated on November 1st. And that could include this. That could include things ending and finishing up and being done with. So, that's going to be interesting to see. It's a time for people to confess, come clean, clear the past. This is our time to really work on that karma piece, really say, okay, look, it's time to turn a page. It's time to head in a different direction that is favorable, positive, good stuff, and stop living in all these vices, stop living in all this crud out there. We could see deaths during this time. We could see murders that are made to look like accidents happening during this time, especially that are connected to travel, planes, trains, even automobiles. Um, and this is where, it's very likely we'll hear things like, "Oh, too bad the celebrity passed. The brakes didn't work on the car." Most of the time you do the research, what happened? Their car was just in for service within the week prior to that. Um, their private jets. Oh man, what a shame that private jet went down. It took these people. Or, oh wow, really strange that airliner had a crash on the runway and took out this whole group of people. Um, I would say a lot of these accidents are not so much accidents. You've got two forms of them. They could be accidents. Some of them could be. They could be because they've got incompetent people in the position, which exposes things, shows, these different components. Um, you could have people paid to sabotage, to create the accidents. Or you could have people that are just flat out sabotaging and murdering. But they don't want to be blamed for it, so they make it look like an accident. And this has happened a lot. It's happened a lot, but it's not the path to take. It's not the path to take. It's gonna come back and get these people. The people that are behind it, it's gonna come back and get them. Um, we've got to put wisdom in motion during this time. That's a soul piece because that's about letting the soul self leave. The soul self works from wisdom, and wisdom needs to go into motion to activate the soul's energy right now. We can see a lot of advancement for those that are nourishing divine presence. So those that are really trying to make a difference in the world, who are really trying to lead people in a favorable direction, who really are there for the people. Um, we could see a lot of big movement forward for them. And we want to watch where that movement is happening and who's behind it. Again, we got to get our ideologies, our perceptions out of the way so we can actually see who's who and what's what going on. Um, but this also comes with it assassination energy, which means that there could be assassinations or attempted assassinations that go on during this time. Um, and that could, usually when we see that, that's usually somebody that's more prominent. We're talking high time, big time A-list celebrity, or we're talking high profile people, politicians. That often follows into the politician range with that. Um, Again, high profile people. I mean, somebody like a Charlie Kirk or somebody like that. Um, that these things happen to. It doesn't normally happen to the everyday person like me or other people, thank goodness it doesn't. But the higher profile people, the more outspoken people, um, are usually the ones that have to be concerned about that. For the average person, it's usually just somebody calling us names or disagreeing with us or calling us stupid for thinking the way that we think or something like that. So it's usually, it's what we call a verbal assassination, as opposed to a physical one going on. But we need to be careful. Again, that's that crowd piece. If you're out in crowds, there can be this stuff going on. Um, we have from the 7th through the end of the month and that soul energy, victim energy coming up, and that is due to betrayal. And a lot of it is done, the betrayal is done for self-preservation. Again, people wanting to be accepted, people wanting to be seen as good, receiving some personal gain out of it in some way. um, that might be there wanting power, wanting control, um, just nourishing the chaos because they want the power and the control. And this is even behind a lot of people that think they're doing a good thing, but they're really about the power and control. They haven't admitted that that's what they're about. They want to be right about things. Um, but they follow lies. It's kind of ironic, really, in a way. So we've got to be very careful about that victim energy. Where do we feel that? Again, especially if we have those feelings coming up, we don't want to be in large crowds or large areas because we tend to magnetize things into happen and we don't want to be in that fear. And there's no need to live in that fear, really. Um, and we can stay out of it if we'll stay out of the victim spaces. And we must stand up to the bullies and the abusers. Again, we don't need to be in battle with them, but we want to stand up to them. We want to stand our ground. We don't want to let them push us around or make us change our beliefs or, um, what we're doing. We don't want to let them push us out of being in the soul self, um, just because they're not being nice to us in there. And during this time, I think we'll find out who our true partnerships are. So again, a spotlight on who are those true partners and what are they going to be. So that's what I've got for this month. And take a look, head on over to the website. Remember again, compassioncodes.com. Check out the code journey. There's all kinds of insights in here. It really gives you a heads up to these things that are going to be happening. You can kind of have fun putting your own pieces together, going, oh, I can see what that might connect to, or what that might work out to be, or what that might link up with, or how that could play out, and or just making the connections, like, oh yeah, she was talking about that, and then we had this big storm happen here, or we had this happened, or it's just good to have the wisdom. It's just good to have the wisdom and to be on track with things and to not get swept up in things in there. Have that foresight to work with. And while you're there, check out some of my other work. Hey, if this information has been valuable for you, if you like it, go ahead, click, like, subscribe, all those good things that we like to remind you of. I can use all the help I can get in there. And, also, if you like some of the work I do, you can follow me on social media. I'm on a lot of the major social media channels, not all of them, but a lot of them. And, you know, there's other work I do with reports and retreats and things like that to help people out. So you can always reach out to me about those things. And hey, if you just want to send me a gift on the website at the bottom of the page, you can always send me a gift. There's a link to get you there. So thank you so much for hanging in there with me. I will see everybody next month. And safe journeys. I'm going to make my last trip on the road this year, this upcoming week before November hits, before that danger hits in there. And then I'm coming back home to Maine and settling in for the winter. Don't know where, don't know how. Might just be vehicle life for the winter. Who knows? We'll see. We'll find out. And we'll see where it leads. But hang in there, everybody, and I will see you next month.